Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bowtie Security Guy After Dark. This is episode 33, I think. I don't remember. With me today, my guest is Brad Voris. Brad, I've been wanting to have you on for a while. I like the stuff that you post on LinkedIn. I like your articles that you put out. And I think you're just all around a cool guy. And I appreciate you coming to hang. First, let's talk a little bit about kind of like how you got into technology. Like what inspired you to kind of follow this crazy path that we do?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Of
It's a
course.
great opportunity. I really do appreciate it. So, as far as what's really got me into IT to start, I mean, I started out in IT, worked my way up. My dad was kind of like a big proponent. He was a mechanic, and when I was younger, he was like, "Hey, you really got to get into computers." He wound up getting us a Commodore 64, and that was kind of like my gateway into computers. So he was kind of like the forefront very early in tech, like 85, 86 when we got a Commodore, and it was just a big push then. From there, I took, your standard keyboarding classes and computer science course in high school. I took electrical systems in high school, and after I was getting close towards graduation, I think it was like my junior year, and I enlisted in the U.S. military. So I
Hmm.
joined the Army, and I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And one of the roles that came up was an MLRS systems repair guy. So basically, my role was going to be the guy that goes out and works on multiple launch rocket systems. I was like, that'll be cool. That'll be something to
Hell
do.
yeah. No, that sounds awesome.
So oh yeah, it was an interesting opportunity. So as soon as I was done with high school, I went off to basic and then went to my AIT, and then eventually I came back. And when I came back, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had worked on tanks, I had worked on some heavy trucks,
Right.
worked on
Yeah,
artillery.
how do you
Like,
translate that into a
yeah,
modern job?
yeah, and it's hard to look at that and go, well, computers, yeah, sure. But I wound up getting a job at CompUSA and worked there for a while selling computers. And then I got bumped over to Best Buy. In like a week working at Best Buy, I had a customer that came in and was like, "Hey, I need some help. I need some RAM for my Winbook." For those of you that have been in IT for a long time and you hear the word Winbook, yeah, this is a long time ago.
That's been a hot minute, that's for sure.
Mm.
One of my first computers was a like a Best Buy computer. I found it in the trash because back then they didn't fix computers when they stopped working on the floor, they just threw them away. So
Hmm.
like I
Yeah.
used to dumpster dive all the time and I would find all kinds of stuff. Like you just reseat the RAM, brand new computer for free.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so, so
definitely
you worked
notorious.
so you worked at Best Buy for a bit. You did like kind of some of that stuff. When did you kind of get your first like official IT role? Was that with Jones and Carter, or was that kind of before then?
No, that was really my first IT role. I actually got
Mm.
hired in from Best Buy by one of the VPs that worked at Jones and Carter. Carlos came in. He was the guy that was talking about, I need memory for my laptop. I don't know what I need to get. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's like, you have good customer service, skills. Would you mind, coming over here and seeing if you'd like to work for my survey company? And I was like, I don't know. I just started here. I've only been here for about a week, but I guess so. And then I wound up interviewing and getting a role, and I worked at Jones and Carter for almost 8 years. Started
Well,
out in
and
help desk.
God,
Yeah.
and that's so I started at the help desk too.
Hmm.
Respect. Anybody who does help desk time, I feel like we make the best leaders. Because we understand the very core functionality of leadership, which is customer service and taking care of your team, right? It
Absolutely
it
agree.
it, it becomes part of your identity when you're within a situation where you're working at a help desk. You exude that kind of behavior. So, and it's so funny that your soft skills and just being a genuinely nice dude is what led to this opportunity because I feel like that's how a lot of people get into technology back in the day. Now, I would
Mhm.
agree that that's still the way we get in more than ever.
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
ask you some questions too about like you're given two candidates. who would you
Hmm.
hire? And we'll talk about that because I've not had a
For
hiring
sure.
manager on the call before. So I'd love to kind of chat with you to kind of you and I can both talk as hiring managers what we look for because I think that'll be really interesting. So you
Sure.
did that for 8 years. You did a
Hmm.
bunch of different stuff there, right?
Oh yeah.
Employee
Yeah.
management, you were kind of like all of us in IT in that time. You were just like wearing different hats. Like, what am I doing
Oh
this
yeah.
week? I'm gonna do something else. And then I see that you moved in as an IT manager into basically working at the Children's Center. How did that
Yeah.
opportunity even come to play?
That was an interesting opportunity. So I was doing some contract work for an MSP, and I went in to go do service for them. They were looking at one of their leads for their marketing was looking at some assistance with some video reproduction equipment. I just so happen to have a little bit of experience with video reproduction. It's primarily back when, you were doing video conversions to like AVI, DivX, and, Windows Media Format, all that stuff. I had experience in it. I was like, hey, I can help out. So I went out there, helped them out, and, they had an opportunity. I applied and I wound up getting the role.
It's interesting. I always tell people because I get a lot of people who are like, well, I don't want to apply. I don't have the skills. And I was like, I've never had the skills for any job I've applied for.
Yeah,
Like, and I get it. It's frustrating. But the reality is, if you have an in and if you have a connection, your resume doesn't matter anymore.
it's very true.
It's no longer a factor. So you did the individual stuff for a long time. You learned technology, I think how a lot of us did who are the more seasoned ilk. Um,
Hmm.
that where you broke stuff and then you built it again and then you broke it again and then you just kind of kept learning and building. Like when did you kind of get to that point in your career where you really started to see like that career growth and like that potential of what you could actually do. Like, you've done a ton of stuff. Um,
Yeah, I mean, f for me, it was kind of interesting because I would think I was probably, it was 16 years thereabouts when I transitioned into security, but it was probably about year 12, year 13 of being in IT. And I had a lot of people that were asking me, how do I get into IT? Because security was still relatively new and not a lot of people were interested or getting into security. It was
yeah.
one of those things where how do I get into IT? What do I need to do? And I started doing mentoring at that time. It's when I really felt like there was a higher calling for myself to help
Yep.
others out. And that's what really drove me more into focusing. I've got to better my career, but I also have to make sure I'm helping other people.
I think that's a big thing for me is like as much as I didn't want leadership, it was something I was called to. It was something where I get more enjoyment out of growing talent and seeing people hit their potential than anything I've ever built in my entire career. Like
Absolutely.
that ability to affect someone's life and create generational change is something that is just
It's
amazing.
phenomenal.
It
Oh
it
yeah,
really
yeah.
is. And that's why
Yeah.
I mentor and that's why I continue to mentor. That's why I mentor so many people for free just to kind of help people who are struggling because this job market is completely jacked. It's a
Hmm.
really, really weird situation. And a lot of people are like, oh, there's this cyber shortage and there's this and that. And I'm like, there is no cyber shortage. That is a lie perpetrated by people who are trying to sell you something. Whether it's a college education and a degree that you don't actually need, or whether it's a CERT program that you can kind of spend seven
Oh yeah.
months and guaranteed six figures, right?
I've got this
Um,
boot camp for you.
Oh, dude,
Exactly.
don't get me freaking started on boot camp. So, like, looking back, kind of, you realize that you had that calling for leadership. A lot of people who want to become leaders, I feel like they want to become leaders because that's a career progression thing, and I think that's the wrong reason to become a leader.
I agree. It really, so I look at everything through the lens of people, process, data, and technology.
Hmm.
And you can't do anything, you can't get anywhere. Granted, yeah, there's AI discussions, and that's more on the tech side, but what it really comes down to is the people, your network, the people you work with, the people you work for.
Yeah.
They are your support structure. They are the ones that you champion and the ones that champion you. you have to understand that, you're not only there to help support and grow your career, not just as a leader, but as a servant to people. And that's always kind of been my philosophy. I'm here to help people. And it really didn't matter if I was in a capacity of an individual contributor or if I was a
Nope.
leader.
Same.
We're here to do a job, and that job is to fix things and make things better for others.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing is like if you're that, I always tell people like if I have an engineer who's crazy smart but can't explain to me what he's doing without making me feel like an idiot, and and it's not that they're doing it to be mean, it's that they're just really smart.
Hmm.
You're gonna want to work with the guy who is more kind of down to earth. You can
Yeah.
have the smartest engineer in the world, and unfortunately, they're not going to make it very far in their career because they haven't worked on that fundamental important skill that you and I were forced to work on in a customer service centric role for as many years as we both did it, which
Yep.
is soft skills.
Yes,
That that
absolutely.
is that is the pivotal, most important skill you can have. And this is just me, and I'm going to ask you the same question. I will hire someone who is less technical, who has a better personality and has better soft skills than somebody who is actively way more technical who can't explain how good they are.
It's funny that it's segueing into specifically around soft skills.
Yeah,
I 100% agree. And the reality is, if you can talk the talk, eventually you'll be able to walk the walk. If you
yeah,
can walk the walk, but you can't talk the talk, then it becomes problematic. And I know that from my own personal experience. When I
same.
started out, phenomenal at tech. I could solve any problem, but I could not talk. I was so introverted. I had such a hard time talking with people. But as I grew and I matured, and I had a very good support structure between my family, my peers, that really opened me up. Getting into security really helped too. Going to college
Yeah,
helped me as well. I absolutely agree. And in my mentorship program, I started doing studies in the last couple of years looking at what are hiring managers looking for. And the very top skills are communication, writing. That's what they want to see front and center. And I'll be honest, when I'm looking at candidates, I'm looking at a resume. How well do they write that resume? They don't have to check all the boxes. I don't care about that.
no.
But what I
Yep.
do care about is, can you explain this to me? It doesn't have to be
Yes.
super deep. It doesn't have to be super technical, but please tell me what it is in your own words.
And explain it and then shut up.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the people who are really highly technical tend to ramble on.
Mm.
And I had a very big problem with this. When I was in my 20s, I had a boss come to me and was like, "Look, everyone hates you." And I'm like, "Wait, hang on, why?" She's like, "Well, you know everything, and you're not afraid to tell them that you know everything." And I was like, "But I'm just trying to help." Right?
Hmm.
And they're like, she said this very important thing, and I've said it on the podcast a few times, but I think it's relevant again, which is, what is your greatest teacher? And I said, failure is my greatest teacher. And she said, what opportunity are you taking away from them by answering their question when they didn't ask for your help?
Yeah.
And it really stuck with me that I was
That's
taking
heavy.
away people's ability to fail and actively putting them in a situation where they would stay dumb because I helped them avoid the pothole. As
Yep.
opposed to the other thing too is, and she goes, not only that, your hubris is astronomical. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I don't like I have rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So like I always thought people hated me. Turned out it was true. And I was just like, I'm a loser. I'm not good enough. Imposter syndrome like wrecked me when I was younger. And and she goes, no, the fact that you think just because you couldn't do it, they can't. That's hubris. That you don't know what they know, and you don't
Hmm.
know what they'll be able to accomplish because they have a different skill set than you. And that stuck with me. And it was one of those things where I was just like, oh my goodness. And I went on, I call it my apology tour, where I was like, hey, I'm sorry. I really didn't know. I was honestly just trying to help. So, as much as Brad mentions helping and kind of being that guy who helps out, wait for someone to ask for your
Hmm.
assistance. Don't assume they want it. Many
Yeah.
people would rather fail and figure it out than be corrected by a peer. Like, period. And that's something I
Yeah.
think we probably both had to learn, where someone's like,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
bro, I wasn't asking you for help. I was
Yeah.
just venting.
I have been there personally and I've felt that pain before. It's a
Yeah.
little there's a little sting to it, but then you also have to, have a little humility and go, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. It is what it
It,
is.
it,
It's a good life lesson.
and it is, and it's not malicious and it's not mean.
Mm-mm.
It's not that they literally are just trying to help you understand. And for someone like me, I have autism and ADHD, so it's like I humans confuse the hell out of me, and I've spent my whole life studying human behavior and the way people talk, the way people their vocal cadence, body language. I've studied it extensively so I could have a better understanding of when I was being rude or when I was being successful in my kind of conversation traits. Um, for you, what do you think is one of the obviously failures your best teacher? I think all of us who've been doing this for a while, but what is that one piece of advice that somebody gave you that's kind of resonated and stuck with you?
So the one piece of advice that has stuck with me my entire life, I when I was in school and I screwed up royally and I made a lot of mistakes. And my dad pulled me to the side. He's like, look, you know what you need to do. And I looked at him and I was like, yeah. And he says, you do what it is that you need to do. You're given a set of instructions, you follow the instructions. Do what it is that you need to do. If you do
Yeah,
that, even if you fail, you're successful. And to this day, I've talked to my dad about that. It's the exact same thing. Now, every single time I look at a situation, I get frustrated, I get angry, I think about all the problems that are, coming around, and then I think back to what my dad had said to me before about do what it is that you need to do. That will help you be successful even if you fail.
yeah,
And I take that to heart. And that is a very, very true statement about everything that we do, regardless of what role we're in.
yeah.
Do what it is that you need to do.
Now let's talk about the job of security itself. Like the schools tote it as this like amazing career where you're constantly learning, constantly doing amazing things. And television and media, talks about how great it is and how it's a constantly evolving field. And while all of that is true, what are your thoughts on kind of the job, like in a job that you, let's say when you were an engineer in one of your previous roles, like
Sure.
how quickly did it take you to get bored because you were doing the same crap every day?
I mean, I'll be honest, the repetitiveness of a lot of those tasks, it does drive you nuts.
It,
The opportunity to touch
yeah,
something new, like you don't quite get that in every single role very frequently.
no, it's
And you will
pretty
do like
rare.
you'll be doing the same thing over and over and over. And personally, not only do I hate doing the same thing over and over and over again, but I really hate the way that it's done. I look at a process and think, there's a better way to do this, so I'm not wasting as much time, so I can go find something else to do.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the differentiators that I've personally had is I've looked at as I was doing a process, I'm documenting that process and I'm looking about how I can optimize the process, make it more efficient, somehow automate that process if possible, and then move on to whatever it is that I can do next.
yeah.
But, it being in security, that is really kind of a crux that we have to deal with is there's a lot of consistent processes, auditing,
100%.
logging, monitoring, deploying, installation, configuration, management. It all is the same. But I mean, it's
And
all been the
it's
same since IT too.
and it has, right? And
Mhm.
that's the thing I want to hit home with. Like, if you're looking for a constantly changing, constantly evolving field, yes, you have to learn things, you have to be involved, you have to read security news, you have to stay abreast of the latest threats. But the fundamentals of the job are almost identical. When you're in
100%.
incident response, you're going to do the same thing on every IR call when an incident comes in, and you're going to follow
Mhm.
that process to the letter. And that process exists for a reason. Consistency, clarity, and commitment to your job, right? Like you've got to have those three C's to be able to take those next steps, like to be
Yep.
able to do the job in general. You have to be committed. I always tell people the SOC role, a SOC analyst role is one of the hardest jobs in the world,
Yes.
because your job is to prove why something is a false positive. And that is going to be 99% of the things you investigate are going to be false positives, but you have to apply the exact same rigor every single time.
Yep.
Imagine if I told you to paint a wall and I said, paint that wall 100 times.
Hmm.
And you're like, but I already painted it. The end
Paint
result's
it
going to be
again.
the same. Paint it
Yep.
again. And
Yep.
that's what the job is like. And a lot of security is that way.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not flashy. Even when you
Hmm.
work red team, for instance,
Yep.
I've done pen testing. Majority of your modern applications are a GUI front end with an API back end. You're
Yep.
basically an API pen tester. And
Hmm.
and you can only do it for so long before you start to lose your mind. I run a team of pen testers. They absolutely abhor API pen test
Oh yeah.
because they're not challenging. But I try to educate people. Your your job is not to challenge you. Your job is to pay your bills. And
Hmm.
when you can take away that personal identity from your career and you don't define your self-worth by how much you feel worthy of the
Hmm.
job or how much you feel you've accomplished, you'll realize, like you and I have, the joy I get from helping mentor and grow talent is drastically far exceeds anything I've accomplished ever.
Yeah.
Because helping people, growing people, working with them, and just being that friend or support structure is more important than anything you'll ever accomplish. Like, think about, like, I always tell people, hey, if you're on your deathbed tomorrow, are you going to talk about that project you spent 18 hours on? No. You're going to talk about that concert you went to that was super awesome and you broke your nose because you fell in a
Yep.
mosh pit. Like, that is more interesting than anything you've done. And what really hit home for me, and you can kind of tell your story too of this. I had taken on a role. I kept taking on everything because I was a new guy, and I kept taking on everything. And when I left that role, they had to backfill me with three people.
Yeah.
Like, has anything like that happened to you where you're like constantly just taking on more and more stuff where like you're the only person who can now do this and there's no other you?
Yeah, I mean, one of my previous roles was exactly like that. So I worked as a lead information security architect at Walmart. And when I stepped into that role, initially it was security solutions, and I was
Hmm.
documenting, I was building out processes. We didn't have good processes in place. And I just hit the ground running. And I was, setting up meetings with my team because their leadership wasn't setting up those meetings. Like, we need to have, good stand-ups, and we got to have, clear instruction as to what we're trying to do. Let's build out some processes. Let's build out a framework. Let's get some consistency. Let's start designing. Let's, make sure we're involving all of our stakeholders where we need to. And the role started evolving and leadership started changing. And I was being, bubbled up more to senior leadership. So I was meeting with, senior leaders, our VP and our CISO. And I was like, this is great. I'm getting that level of visibility. But, in doing that, I'm also still doing all of these little tasks of the day-to-day management. Yeah, I was a lead, but I wasn't necessarily the manager. So I was doing all the project management, and I was doing,
Yeah.
making sure that everything stayed in line with all of our projects. I was, filling in all of those gaps. I was making sure people were meeting their training quotas and everybody was doing, I'm literally doing all of these things while still doing all of my projects and keeping everybody up to date and meeting with other stakeholders to make sure we're getting more intake for projects. And it was absolutely crazy. So when I left that role, I know that they were desperately trying to backfill that role. And I know they were filling it with two, three, maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
I get it. I was doing a lot. I was trying to, as we were getting new leadership in, trying to make sure that they understood what our role was, how we were in the org, what we were trying to do, what we were trying to accomplish, what our goals were, and how those align with our business strategy and what those goals were.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if I'm able to do that successfully and still do my job, I'm happy. Yeah, it's stressful,
Yeah.
but My people are taken care of. My work is taken care of. I'll be able to relax knowing that everything was good.
Yeah, yeah. How many hours are you putting in per week, you think?
They're probably about 70.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
And I
and,
was a
and
remote employee. It was pretty rough and I did a lot of traveling, probably. So I was remote here in Houston. I traveled to Bentonville, Arkansas. I went to Reston, Virginia quite a bit. Went to
right.
Dallas for a couple of things. So probably once every month. Then eventually it started churning out to be a once every 2 months, and it was
Yeah.
just getting to be way, way too much.
Yeah, and the interesting thing apart about that is that that happens kind of organically.
Hmm.
Whenever you're a person who goes above and beyond, you're a person who gets a lot more work. And what Brad didn't mention is that there were literally other bosses that he is now outshadowing, and he is not going to get any raises. He's not going to get anybody backing him up. It's going to be even harder for him to move because he's put like the right people are seeing him at the highest levels, but now he's
Yeah.
created a bunch of managers who are bitter and pissed off. I did the exact same thing
Yeah.
because I took on so much. Everyone's like, "Well, you're making us look bad," and I'm like, "So you want me to do less?" Like
Yeah. I don't work that
yeah,
way. I mean, come
yeah.
on.
I'm sorry. I'm used to working myself to death because my ADHD needs a dopamine hit, and this is new and fascinating to me. So that's I think this field attracts that type of personality.
I agree.
And when you're one of those people who constantly works, and I think you and I are both those types where we're not going to stop. Like unless we're dead, we're still going to be working on something.
Yeah.
Um, because there's this passion and drive to continue to better ourselves and to continue to challenge the status quo, to make things better, not just for us, but for everyone around us,
Hmm.
right? Like, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of leaders are missing. Like, I always say that I learn more from bad leaders than I've ever learned for good ones.
Yeah.
What
I'd have
about
to
you? Like,
agree.
what's your, yeah, like,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen throughout, my 26 years working in IT and IS, I've seen a lot of very, very horrible leadership. And if anything, as a leader, it has driven me to have a lot more empathy for the people around me,
yes,
be
for sure.
incredibly humble, but also understand that there is not just one way to do things. You have to communicate and you have to understand everyone's perspective.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I took it for everything with blinders and I'm just going, trying to get tasks done, and that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
But, as you start picking up leadership roles and you're listening to the people around you, and you have to understand, you have to have that sympathetic ear and understand they have a lot that's going on. It's not just the things that they're doing at work, but it's also the day-to-day
Oh man.
stresses and
Oh,
things. Those all impact us even when we're working. We try not to think
yes.
about it. We try and stay focused, but we have to take that into consideration, and that deeply impacts our staff. I try to take a lot of what I've learned from these absolutely terrible managers. Not all of them have been bad, but a lot of them have been, and use that to be a better person and be a better manager.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's key, right? Is
Mhm.
really being humble, I think is huge. And not just like a false humble, like actually
Mhm.
knowing you literally mean nothing.
Yeah.
Like your job is there to support your team and to make
Yeah.
them as successful as humanly possible.
I
Um,
would rather take the heat and fail myself than see my teams fail.
Every time, dude. Every
Yeah.
time. I mean the reason that I lost my previous gig at the House of the Mouse was I wouldn't let my team go.
Hmm.
I wouldn't let them take the hit, right?
Yeah.
And that was really important to me. And I'd never been in a position where I had to think about making those decisions. Um, and it was a no-brainer because I couldn't have looked myself in the mirror if I didn't do everything in my power to keep their jobs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, and
That's the one thing that hits me really hard is I've got to think about at the end of the day, they're people just like I am. They have
yeah.
families they need to take
Oh
care
my
of.
God. Even
The
when
last
I,
thing I would be
Yeah.
more than happy to lose my job if I made sure that my staff were supported. I can
E-
find another job, you
Even
know?
if I laid off a guy who wasn't doing his job, I still am devastated.
Oh yeah.
Like I know the impact it's going to have to their family. I know the impact
Mhm.
it's going to have to their jobs prospects, and I feel horrific even though it's their fault entirely and I'm
Yeah.
not going to I still feel awful and I think a lot of leaders are so focused on being a boss and being in
Yeah.
charge that they forget what it is to lead.
Hmm.
And they forget those very pivotal things like humility, empathy. And
Yes.
I joke with somebody, I was having a mentor conversation with somebody today who's a new leader. And I was like, how do you know your team is successful? He's like, well, that this person is doing more than everybody else. And I was like, is that successful or is that your failure? And he's like, I I don't know. And I was like, why is he doing so much more than everybody else? That's a question you need to ask. Is it because he's just
Hmm.
jumping on everything? Or is it because he is jumping on everything and then taking away the ability for the other people to learn the thing that he's jumping on? Do you have a situation like in the Phoenix Project where you've got a Brent who's just constantly getting in the way of things? Um, that may be the reality, but a lot of times leaders don't take a moment to ask themselves why. When things are working, they're just like, oh, it's working. What does it matter?
It
And
does
that,
matter.
oh my gosh, man, does it? And it's so critical to servant leadership that you understand not only that your people are people, but the shit that happens to them outside of work can
Hmm.
drastically affect how they perform.
Yes.
And your job is not to come down on them. Your job is to be empathetic, to
Yeah.
understand, to give them the time to recover, and to take a step back because in the end, we're not curing diseases. We're stopping, attackers and things of that nature. I always like when I would join an incident bridge and everything would be on fire, and I'm like, is someone dying? And they'd be like, what? No. And I was like, cool. Now that we've established that, let's all take a breather. It's like, we'll be okay. We'll get through this. So for your career, as you've kind of moved into that senior and executive role, um, I've been in the executive space now for a few years. I think the hardest thing for me in the executive space is how little I'm able to do kind of hands-on and how much I have to inherently trust my team to do their job when I'm somebody who does like to kind of manage and control things. Was that a hard transition for you to kind of change that mindset of kind of being the guy in the trenches, so to speak?
Well, to be honest, I still keep myself in the trenches. It's not, just a matter of knowing my team and knowing process and
Hmm.
understanding how things are. But it's, my personal ego. I have to at least understand what it is
Understand.
that
Yep.
I'm doing, that my team is doing, and I'm not trying to take work away from them. I really want to know what they're doing because the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
thing I want to do is go talk to senior leadership and say, "Hey, it's X, Y, and Z," and I don't know
Yes.
shit about what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, that's huge.
That's bad.
Yeah, I call it hoverboat leadership. I
Hmm.
want to be able to jump down in the water with you, but I want to be able to get out pretty quickly too. Like, it's like I don't want to get in the weeds. I want to pull your ass out and go, "What are you working on? All right, that makes sense. Let's talk about it for a little bit. Cool. Go back and do your thing." And then,
Hmm.
head off on my hoverboat. The biggest thing is like you don't want to stay too deep in the weeds because, like you said,
Yeah.
it'll undermine your team. But you also don't want to be so complacent that you don't understand what they're doing because
Yep.
it will not allow you to represent your team appropriately.
Exactly.
Or, in the worst case, which you and I have dealt with probably hundreds of times, your leader will make promises that you cannot cash.
Yes. Yeah. And working with senior leadership, I have to be very explicit on what our capabilities are and what our capabilities aren't.
Yep.
Very, very clear about that. Because if we're not clear about that and they hear something, see something, know something, that can get out of hand very quickly and that can become incredibly costly, not just from a monetary perspective, but specifically from a time perspective, man
Yeah.
hour perspective. Last thing
Yep.
I want to do is force my team, my staff members to jump through a bunch of hoops because someone had the wrong impression about a piece of software.
Bingo. Yeah, or that you didn't represent it appropriately and gave incorrect
Yes.
timelines because now you know what you're doing. You're rolling your sleeves up and you're getting into it too because you're taking that hit with them. Like
Yep.
I'm like, all right, well, we're gonna be up at 2 o'clock in the morning because I dorked this up. Like I'm gonna be there with you. I may not be able to do everything you can do, but I'm here for whatever you need. You want me to do grunt work? You want me to do garbage task? I got you. You want me to do some QA? That's fine, man. Whatever you need, I'll be there. And I think that type of mentality and that type of servant leadership really resonates with people because most people never get that in their career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I've had maybe two or three in 20 years who were that way. And I still remember them. I'm still friends with them. Hell, I got invited to one of my employees' weddings. He hasn't worked for me in almost a decade. Like,
Yeah.
that's the type of relationships you want to make with your team, and that's the type of things that you want to do. But Brad, man, I
Absolutely.
appreciate you coming to hang out. I appreciate your insights. Hopefully, people learn some stuff. Um, that's all I got, man. I appreciate you for coming
Cool.
to hang out.
Oh, sure. Anytime. Yeah. Anytime you want to do this, just let me know and get a couple of beers. We'll kick back and shoot the shit.
Hell yeah, brother. Thanks, man. Good luck
Thanks,
out
Rob.
there.
Thanks. You too.